Good morning. Well, I'm happy to be able to wake you up today with a very exciting talk about open source software foundations. And I'm sure you're worried that you may be dozing right off and going right back to sleep. I'm going to tell you actually how they're really exciting and how they play a really important role in the work that you do as a software developer. So my name's Jon Galloway. I like .NET and I like open source. I've liked both for a long time. And so I guess it's not surprising eventually that I became the executive director of the .NET Foundation. So, when I first found out I was getting that job, I had to answer the same question over and over and over. People would say, "Congratulations." So what is that? And and they also said, "Oh, if you're an executive, why aren't you wearing a suit?" But that's another question. So what exactly is an open source software foundation, and why should you care? So I decided to go and look into, most things are best explained with an animated GIF. And I looked, and unfortunately, the answers that I got when I searched for this were not very helpful. So then I thought, okay, let's go and look and see what Professor Wikipedia has to say. And there's a lot of blah, 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 and that's also not very helpful. So I think a better way to look at this, to solve this problem, is to look at what problems software foundations solve. So let's step back a bit and let's look at .NET. Where is .NET as an open source project? .NET itself continues to grow. Who here has been using .NET since like 1.0 time? .NET Framework 1.0. Okay, so there's a few old timers. It still surprises me to see every year. I was using it since the early betas, and it still surprises me to see how it keeps growing and how it continues to grow as a project. I have these on auto advance, so I got to talk faster for these ones. You'll see we have over 1 million .NET Core developers. We see, the open source contribution, 87% of contributions are from outside of Microsoft, which is mind-blowing, right? And then also, when you look at highest velocity open source software projects on GitHub, that's .NET, that green dot up there. And some of the other ones up here is Microsoft Docs. So it's surprising to see that, and encouraging. You can see over time, this is kind of where .NET kind of has evolved. Even from the beginnings, it was launched, so I had these at a kiosk at Build last week, and it was a great slide that I took a long time putting together, and I had it auto-rotating at the thing. So don't worry, not all the slides are like that. You can see even from the beginning, we launched using a specification with the idea that it could be open source. Over time, we've moved to open sourcing and eventually contributing to the .NET Foundation, which is a separate nonprofit. So what sort of problems do you run into and need a software foundation to solve? Well, one of those is collaboration. As .NET has been open sourced, it is being contributed to, like I said, 87% of these contributions are outside of Microsoft. That includes individuals. It also includes some pretty big companies. These are some that are on our technical steering group. There are a lot of others that are depending on .NET, that are shipping and contributing to .NET source code. And so there are places where having an external thing that's bigger than Microsoft or separate from Microsoft to kind of hold the intellectual property and handle the legal stuff and all that becomes really important for everyone to be able to collaborate. Another problem that open source software foundations solve is open source sustainability. So how many times have you been working on something and you go and you look and you find the perfect thing? Maybe it's a NuGet package or it's on GitHub, and it's unfortunately abandoned. It has last contributions a few years ago, tons of pull requests sitting out there. Every recent issue says, is this project abandoned? So it's just kind of sitting there, right? That's really sad. This is a place where this project is something where obviously from the issues, from the pull requests, people want that project to keep going, and it's stuck, right? So in order for, this is an important problem to solve for a lot of reasons. One is so that you as a developer don't run into this. But number two is larger companies, larger projects that want to use an open source library, they don't want to run into this problem. And so sometimes, if they can't, even if they find a library that looks, or a project or something that looks just perfect, if they're not sure that it's going to be around for the next several years, sometimes they'll write their own, right? So it's really important to not run into this problem. So we want to make sure that the projects that you care about, that you want to invest in, that your team is going to use. And sometimes it's tempting to think that all these projects, these projects that you really care about are very professionally maintained, that they're a huge project team. The reality is not that. A lot of the time, some of the projects that I've worked with as they join the .NET Foundation are tiny teams, 1 or 2 people that are really the core of those teams. And they're struggling to keep up with the project. Every project just about that we work with, including, I'll give you an example of a project that joined .NET Foundation recently, is JSON.NET. Probably just about everyone here is using JSON.NET, right? So even if you don't know you are, because up until the .NET Core 3.0 release, it's using JSON.NET just for loading projects, right? So everybody's using JSON.NET. XUnit, NUnit, all of these projects really are used all over the place, in just about every case maintained by really a core team of about 1 or 2, maybe 3 people if they're lucky, right? So that's another problem we need to solve. That's another problem that is hard for a person working by themselves to solve. It really does take kind of a plan, right? It takes a group and a plan and a long-term vision. One other thing is just strategic ecosystem support. So the idea here is, I don't know about you, often I'll see something on Twitter or Reddit or Hacker News or wherever you hang out and complain with your other programmers, and people will say, this is terrible, this should be like this, or I wish open source worked this way, or I wish we could all help out with this thing, right? So there are cases like that. I'll give you an example of a project. There was a project called SimpleSource, and they had a commercial thing where people could pay to use it, and then they had a free open source offering. A lot of people do that. Over time, they said, hey, we're not making enough from our commercial enterprise version, and so we're just going to shut down. So that was sad because a lot of people were using the open source version. So what do you do? And everyone says, somebody should fix that. But who should that somebody be? And it's not really the best answer to say Microsoft. I know it's tempting to do that, but it's not really healthy for anybody. So I am both a Microsoft employee and I work for the .NET Foundation. The way that works is similar to the way that many of you are allowed to contribute to open source projects while you work at a company. Microsoft contributes my time to the .NET Foundation, right? So I kind of see things from both sides, the Microsoft side and the .NET Foundation side. So stepping back, you may say, why doesn't Microsoft fix this? Well, sometimes Microsoft, sometimes it doesn't line up exactly with something that's in Microsoft business interest. And so even if they decide, hey, this is a nice thing to do, it's not always set up so that they'll keep doing it year after year. Or if one manager leaves, or if groups get reorganized. So it really, as we look at .NET Foundation, or at .NET with 87% external contributions, it doesn't make sense to point at one company and expect one company to do the best thing for everyone, right? So I want Microsoft to do the best thing for everyone. I am excited that Microsoft is spending time and money on .NET and will continue to do that, but I want something else to also help out with the long-term vision of just .NET. No matter if Microsoft says, today is all about Windows phone apps, or Microsoft is all about HoloLens, or Microsoft, right? Microsoft has different business interests. One of those is .NET. I want something that is 100% .NET, only all .NET all the time, right? So this is a place where if we had somebody that only cared about .NET, they could look at these bigger picture things and solve things like that. All right, so now we can step back and see, what does the .NET Foundation do? So the .NET Foundation actually is an independent open source software foundation. So our information is at dotnetfoundation.org, and we are, it is a separate nonprofit company. It is supported by Microsoft and some other companies, but it is not run by Microsoft. And we'll get into that a bit more later as we go. All right, so we've actually been around since 2014, and we were set up as part of open sourcing a lot of .NET. And so here are some of the things we have been doing. So the rest of this talk, I'm going to talk about what we've been up to. I'm going to talk about some exciting recent changes, and then I'm going to talk about the future and how you can get involved with that. Okay? So these are some things we've been up to recently, or since we were founded in 2014. One of those is project support. So as you look at this, you're going to see some big things like ASP.NET and the core things of .NET. You're also going to see some projects that are not, things like JSON.NET and Identity Server and things that are originally contributed by the community. So some things that we do when projects join the .NET Foundation. So projects join the .NET Foundation by being contributed. So there's an actual contract signed. This happens for Microsoft projects as well. So I'm currently working with a few projects. We've had some recently. One that just went through a few weeks ago was .NET for Apache Spark. So this was announced at a conference. This is something that Microsoft was building internally. They said, hey, we have we have .NET developers that would love to work with Spark and get really good performance and be able to write in .NET. And so they wrote this library, and as part of open sourcing it, they contributed to the .NET Foundation. So that meant we did all we have a standard contract, and we went through, and I actually, I signed it as the executive director of the .NET Foundation, and they signed it, the project leader signed it, okay? So when Microsoft projects join, it's an official contribution. They've given that license, they've contributed the intellectual property to the .NET Foundation. The same happens when a small project or a community project joins, right? So JSON.NET or NUnit or XUnit, all of those projects, we work through, we figured out, okay, who's contributed the code, and those people that have contributed to the project sign it, and we sign it. So once projects join, then we're able to support them legally. So this is important for, say, say Identity Server or something like that. They are sometimes used by banks, used by large companies. Sometimes they need legal support. They'll have legal questions from people that are wanting to use them in a product. They will have license questions, that kind of stuff. So we have legal support that we can give them. We also offer a contributor license agreement. So who here has signed the .NET Foundation Contributor License Agreement? Okay. Anyone that's contributed to opensource.net, you have signed that contributor license agreement. And it's actually gotten simpler recently. So the way that works is when you submit a pull request, let's go over and look at one. Okay, so we look at Core SDK. Let's look at a recent pull request. And we can see here's one where someone is, has a pull request sent in. This is Nate McMaster. He works at Microsoft. He signed the .NET Foundation contributor license agreement, just like everyone else that contributes. And so it actually shows in here, all checks have passed. And for this one, the Core SDK, they have 26 checks. One of those checks is that he signed the contributor license agreement, okay? So this you'll see down here at the bottom. And it actually, if you click through, this shows the license that's signed. So this is something that we offer. This is in effect for Core SDK. This is in effect for other projects contributed by the community as well. Okay. I know legal stuff sounds super boring, but it's actually really important because, like I said, for these projects, if they need, in order for people to use them, they need to be sure that they're not going to get sued. They need to be sure that their license is fine. They want to be used by larger projects, by banks, by governments, et cetera, and they need to have everything lined up. Contributor license agreement is part of that. So yeah, this is kind of the part of the setup. So there's that. There's also certificates. So we help handle and issue certificates to projects. So an obvious one that you think of is HTTPS certificates, right, for a website. Those are more important lately because most browsers will give you errors if you don't have those. But a more interesting one is code signing. And so for projects that are distributing a binary distribution, so that includes an installer, but it can include also a NuGet package. They need to be code signed in order, so you don't get that message that says, you know, this isn't a trusted executable or not frequently run or that kind of thing. So we ran into a problem with this when we wanted to set this up because code signing certificates, if you want them to be issued to a project, say you want a code signing certificate that says, you know, identity server, then identity server actually needs to be registered as a business. So that happens if you look at all these projects, you have 1 or 2 person teams and they don't want to spend hundreds of dollars every year on licenses and going and filling out papers. So how can we help all of these projects all at once? So we worked on a system. Oren Novotny led this project, and we have this code signing system set up where we actually have a system where we register a trade name with the state of Washington, which is where .NET Foundation is registered. And so we actually get a trade name for each project. And then as part of that, we have a deal with DigiCert set up, and we get code signing certs issued. This is a snapshot of our code signing service. So as part of that, once these projects have these certificates, they actually need to sign their each release. Setting that up and actually doing code signing the right way is difficult. So we've built a service for that. So as projects join, just magic happens and all their releases are code signed. Okay. Again, these are things that when you've got a project being led by 1 or 2 people in their spare time, limited time, you don't want them messing with stuff like this. You want them fixing bugs and shipping features, right? So we try and bundle all the stuff that projects need to do but don't want to do, and we do it for them. I'll rush through some of these others, but CI, this includes AppVeyor, Azure DevOps. So each check-in is built, and a release can be, like nightlies and stuff can be shipped. Package feeds, hosting. This is for things like I mentioned before, symbol source. So the end of that story is we actually reached out to symbol source. We worked together with the symbol source team and with the NuGet team, and we had symbol source join .NET Foundation, and we supported the Azure hosting and everything, and we coordinated it so that it worked. NuGet handled certain symbols, and symbol source handled others, right? SaaS, other stuff. Marketing and communications. This is another area, again, where a lot of projects have very limited time and reach. And so if they release something new for their project, how do they get the word out? So we have, newsletters and things. We also have a YouTube channel. So who here watches a .NET community stand-up? Okay, cool. Yeah, we started with the ASP.NET community stand-up. We've been doing these for years now, I think 4 or 5 years almost, 4 years maybe, and now we've expanded, so we have Tuesday and Thursday shows. So Tuesday shows are ASP.NET, and Thursday shows are .NET, and we kind of rotate through all the different things you can do with .NET. So we'll have like a mobile show and a desktop show and a cloud show and that sort of thing. So the idea with these shows is where you can interact directly with the product team. So we start with community links. We like to share things the community is doing. and then we'll have, say, a guest or a topic, and we'll dig into that, and then we'll take live questions and answers. So we do these on YouTube and Twitch as well, and this is something we're continuing to build up. This is something, too, where we're planning to expand this so it's not just the community stand-ups. As we have kind of larger audiences for both YouTube and Twitch, is to do things like spotlights with a .NET Foundation project, a community project. Cool. We also do meetups. So we sponsor meetups. This is an area where we looked at and we saw that we tried searching for .NET meetups, and we found that it was really hard to find them. You might find something that had .NET as part of the URL, and so it came up as a search result. So we actually sponsor 290 groups now, including one here in St. Petersburg. So as part of this, we do things like we send out swag to them, we send out content. We also include them in event series. When I mention that content, a lot of people aren't aware of this. We have, as part of .NET Foundation, we have this community content, or this content we make available to speakers and to meetups and stuff. So here we have, for instance, this Blazor workshop is a new workshop. This is an example. This is something we want to make available to you. If you want to run your own workshop, you can do this on your own and learn Blazor, or you can lead an event and you can, a person can walk a group through this. You can use these at work, you can use these at meetups, whatever. So here's an example. These are, really in depth. So a lot of great information here. So that is an example of the Blazor one. We've got ASP.NET Core. We've got stuff like, after .NET Conf shipped. And then probably by the end of this week, we'll have a lot of the .NET slides from Build last week. We'll have live up on this site as well. So that's another example of something we're providing for meetups. So yeah. And so there's the thing, meetup.pro.net. You can also, I'll have links at the end, but you can contact me if you would like to get involved with a meetup, or if you know of a meetup that should be part of .NET Foundation. So yeah, we see, as part of this, we can look across and we can see the growth. So it's anonymous as far as who is at the different events and all that, of course. But in general, we can see how many people are attending events, which is really cool. We also sponsor some kind of larger events. So .NET Conf every September is sponsored by .NET Foundation. We also, as part of that, then we have local events afterwards. So we had, after .NET Conf 2018, we had almost 160 in-person events, and these are done as part of meetups. Okay, so that's the stuff we have been doing. That is actually kind of slimmed down quite a bit. There's a lot of other stuff that happens all the time. Projects need help with things. There are other, events or things that we can jump in and help with. There are, just tons of things that we do all the time, but that's kind of a snapshot of some of the things we have been doing in the past. So we decided that was good, but it didn't scale as well as it could. So the structure of .NET Foundation up through the beginning of this year was, there was the executive director, me, and then there were 3 members of the board of directors. There were 2 that were Microsoft employees. They were awesome Microsoft employees. There were Scott Hunter, who is the PM for all of .NET, and Miguel de Icaza, who is Miguel de Icaza. So they're amazing people, right? Miguel, in case you don't know, Miguel started the Mono project and has led Xamarin and is brilliant and all of those things. And then we also had a Microsoft-appointed board of director or community director that didn't work for Microsoft. So it was a separate foundation, but it was really pretty controlled by Microsoft. We got all of our funding from Microsoft donations. So there were a few problems with that. One is, it was not giving us all the benefits of being a complete external separate thing that it could. We were limited by living inside the Microsoft bubble. We also couldn't scale that well. The people I mentioned, Scott and Miguel, are crazy busy, and so they would, they were available for kind of signing off on things and, overseeing the work of the foundation, but they didn't have much time besides that. So really, it ended up being one person, and how much can one person do? So wouldn't it be great if we could do more than that? Also, as far as corporate sponsorship, we've been surviving off of Microsoft donations every year, which is great, but again, it doesn't give us that kind of, it's not completely independent or as independent as it could be. It's also dependent on what Microsoft can donate every year. So sometimes if more money or less money is available, our budget would jump up and down. So much better would be if we had external, other sources of income. So we solved all those things all at once. Number one is we launched corporate sponsorship. So as our, whoa, I hit the wrong button there. That's scary. Our corporate sponsorship, we added on Pivotal, Telerik, and Insight. And we're talking to several other companies about joining. If you work for a company that's interested, big or small actually, let me know. So the idea here is that these companies contribute. It's not a huge amount of money. So you look at some of the larger software foundations like Linux Foundation, large companies pay $1 million or so a year, maybe more, to join, right? So as we looked at some of the different foundations, some are very expensive. .NET Foundation, the largest projects with over 10 million US revenue per year, pay us 50,000 in dues, right? So it's kind of more scaled back. We're not trying to make a lot of money. We're a nonprofit, but we would love to have other sources of income and then be able to spend that money. Like I said, we're a nonprofit, so all our money goes to good, to the causes of .NET. So that includes sponsoring projects, putting on events, and then some other exciting things that we're looking at doing in the future by having more money and sources of money, right? So that's the sponsorship thing. Next is membership and elections. So who here is a member of the .NET Foundation? Yay, thank you. Thank you, people. So this is really cool. We launched this thing, we launched this membership thing. And it's really still kind of new. And the people that joined really had to kind of see the vision of this, and over time, I think it's going to get more obvious why you would want to join. So the people that have already joined, I thank them for kind of trusting us. So the idea is members can do a few things. One of the first things that we offered was being able to run in and vote in the elections. Okay, so I'll come back to this slide after I show you this one. So we had elections in March, and we had 6 seats open. And these are the, so Beth Massey, right there. Sorry for shooting you, Beth. So that's Beth, and she works for Microsoft. She is amazing. She also runs marketing for .NET and does all kinds of great stuff. She's great because she is not afraid to stand up for whatever is best for .NET. So she's great. She is a Microsoft employee. Everyone else here is not a Microsoft employee. So you'll notice some of these people, if you've ever been to Stack Overflow, you've seen John Skeet. John Skeet works for Google. So this is cool, right? So you actually look at, this is the management. These are the people who make decisions, who sign the papers, who decide which projects can join or what .NET Foundation does. My bosses, this is your board of directors for the .NET Foundation. So I think this is really pretty cool and pretty amazing. So we've gone from a foundation which is on paper separate from Microsoft to very separate from Microsoft. And this is a look, all these people down here are people that ran in our elections. So we had 6 seats open, and we actually, at the beginning, were kind of worried. We said, what if we don't get 6 people to run in the election? What are we going to do? We had 45 people, which I think is pretty great. And we had a wide variety of people. It's cool. So these people serve for 1 year, and then we'll have elections again next March, and so more people can jump in. So that is kind of the first thing. We had, when the elections happened, we had 430 members. We're now at over 500, and we're We're kind of working our way up there. I would like to see a lot more over time. Part of this is we have to, actually teach people what is the .NET Foundation. That's part of me being here and talking to you, is to explain what is the foundation, why you should care. We're also going to have more ways for members to get involved in the future. And so I'll talk about that as I wrap up. When we're talking about foundations, one that we looked at is the F# Foundation. Is anyone here a member of the F# Foundation? Cool. Awesome. So the F# Foundation was one of our inspirations. And they have like 2,000 some members. They've been around for a while longer. But so when we look at that, we're like, hey, .NET Foundation could be just that big or maybe bigger. And that's awesome. So in other words, I feel like we're just getting started there. I think they should cache their member roster because it does take a little bit to come up. Cool. So that's the elections. That's kind of what's happened. So now what's next? Now that we have this board, is it a group that's just going to have meetings and send emails? No. So all of these people, when they ran in the elections, had a they ran for something, right? So they said, here's, if elected, this is what I'm interested in. So for instance, John Skeet. So they wrote up a thing of said, here's what I'm interested in fixing. Jon Skeet, very interested in diversity, making .NET not just a bunch of middle-aged white dudes. I think that's a really, a good thing to look at, and so that's something that he's looking at helping solve. A bunch of Ben Adams. So Ben, in his thing, if you don't know Ben, he's contributed a lot. He's separate from Microsoft. He's external. He's contributed a ton of stuff to .NET performance. He's done a lot of work on things like making ASP.NET incredibly fast. So Ben has looked at, he wants to be involved in some things like technical oversight, project oversight, right? So all of these people ran for different platforms. They said, here's what I'm interested in doing. We looked at all those different things. We looked at what .NET Foundation's doing, and we said, how can we scale that up? So our kind of next step plan is to form these action groups. So they could have been called committees, but I think, again, a committee, the word committee, at least in English, can mean like people just sitting and talking. And we want to actually do things, right? So that group of 7 people have all signed up to help run these different action groups. So outreach, that means reaching new people that are not using .NET yet or are not part of our community yet. So that includes geographic diversity. It includes people that don't all look the same. It includes different age groups, right? Students. How can we make .NET more interesting to students? That kind of thing, right? Another thing that's important is project support. So we are happy to support 75 projects about now. And we've just, in the past few weeks, we brought on 4 more. So we are bringing on projects. However, we've got more projects wanting to join than we have the bandwidth to add them. That's for a few reasons. One is it takes some work to review and sign off the papers and all that. The more important thing is when projects join, we want to really support them well. And we don't want to bring on hundreds of projects and then the projects say, hey, sign me up for the CLA and the signing service and whatever, and they send us an email and we're not able to help them. So we're already kind of struggling with keeping up with the existing projects we have. So this group, this action group, is looking at, how can we handle project support. Now already you're thinking, okay, great, we went from 1 person doing this work to 8 people, the board plus John. You've got a big list there. You're already like, how is this going to work? So here is part of the kind of master plan is to look back at what we've got available. We don't just have that board of 7. We actually have, if you look at this, we have 45 people who are passionate about .NET and wrote about how they want to be part of .NET's future and help lead. And many of these people, I would say most of them, have reached out to me and said, I don't care if I don't get elected, keep me involved. I would love to keep working on this and contributing. But then we also have these 430, and I've had a lot of them that didn't run in the election, but they've told me, put me to work. I would love to help. So, and then if we look further at what if we had thousands of members, right? So now, let's look at this again. And we say, okay, we've got these, 7 teams run by 8 people and with hundreds, of people available to pitch in if they want to. And then you can see .NET Foundation getting a lot bigger, doing a lot more, right? So then, again, kind of looking out, and I don't know how long it'll take to get there, and I know that we're still kind of figuring out some of our steps, but now look at this with, instead of 1 company chipping in, we have maybe 10 companies. Maybe we have 15 or 20 companies. .NET's used around the world by millions of developers, by tons of companies, making billions of dollars off of .NET, right? So what if we have, a dozen or 2 dozen companies contributing to .NET Foundation? And now we're able to do quite a bit, right? So you look at all these things and you say, wow, what could we do more for project support if we had a budget of 50,000 annually of, or whatever, right? And we say, wow, these projects, we could contribute to paying for writing documentation. We could pay for, an internship. We could pay bug bounties. We could, any of these things down the list, right? So outreach, putting on events, putting on student events, paying for student internships. That's, again, something. It's something you can do without any money, but having money helps, right? So all these things, this is an area where we can look at, this could really blow up in a big way. Blow up in the good sense of blow up. So membership, this is looking at, how do we both explain why you'd want to join as a member and then make it easier to join as a member. And then once you've joined as a member, how do we help you get involved? Marketing, communication. So far, the marketing and communication has been me writing blog posts and newsletters, and then Beth sometimes corrects me and says, John, that doesn't make any sense. It would be better if we had more people involved in this. Corporate partnership. So this is an area we talked about corporate sponsors, and we've already, I showed you those 3 that have joined. I'm talking to some other large, exciting companies that are looking at joining. But both how can we bring more on board and how can we make .NET Foundation really valuable and helpful to them? But there's more there. What about how can we encourage a lot of large corporations use .NET. They use open source .NET, but they don't contribute back to open source .NET. Sometimes because they just don't know. Sometimes the developers know, but they can't get permission to, or they need legal questions solved. Sometimes they need help explaining to their managers why it helps their company to contribute back. I'm sure anyone here struggle with that at all? They want to contribute to something open source and they don't have permission to, maybe, right? So that's an area too where that's why we called it not just corporate sponsorship, but corporate partnership, because we want to work better with companies to get them more involved. Technical oversight, I mentioned that's an area where it would be great to have, not just Microsoft making all the technical decisions. There are places where, people like Ben Adams and John Skeet and Phil Hack, these folks could, and all of them, of course, could look and say, hey, why don't we improve this, build quality, or, why don't we improve certain things for not just projects Microsoft ships, but other projects as well? How can we help set standards or, whatever, right? And then finally, Speaker Bureau and Meetups. So I mentioned that we have these 290 Meetups around the world and that we provide them content. But there's a lot more we could do with that, especially if we had some money available, right? So some of the things we're looking at doing is speaker tours, making it easier for Meetups to find speakers, or speakers to find a Meetup to go to, make it possible for maybe a few speakers to put together a tour, that kind of thing. So this is we had in the past. We've had organizations like INETA, and this is kind of looking at the best of what happened with those, but making a long, sustainable thing that benefits the entire .NET community, right? Cool. So now I'm coming to the end of my talk. I may have a little bit of time for questions at the end. I want to kind of give you some ideas of how you can personally get involved. So the first thing here is contribute to .NET open source. Some ways that you can do that. There are some things out there. There's this Up for Grabs website, which can help. It's based on looking at projects on GitHub and looking for tagged issues that say Up for Grabs. There's this site, Your First PR, which is kind of information about how to submit a pull request. There's some important things when you submit a pull request. It's best not to submit, just out of the blue, do a huge amount of work and submit a pull request that changes 100 files. It's better to create an issue and to talk with the lead developer and that kind of thing. So looking at guidance helps. But the number one tip here is this docs.microsoft.com. And I actually want to show you. Let me see if I can pull this up. Oh dear. Hopefully nobody's tweeted mean things to me lately. So last week I was at Build, and I was sitting in my hotel room sending emails like I do. And then I thought, why don't I try and meet up with somebody? So I said, I tweeted, hey, I'm going to be in the lobby Starbucks working. If somebody would like to, come and talk about open source or learn about, contributing, come talk to me. So Jim did. This is Jim Buck, and he said, how do I get started? And I showed him that if you go to docs.microsoft.com and you click on just about anything, there's an edit button. So hopefully this is news to somebody. Just about anything, I see typos, I see things that, well, that's not correct anymore, or this link is broken. So you can click edit, and then you click again on the pencil here, and you're creating a pull request. So you go and type in everything you want to, and then they've given me commit, which is scary, but you will probably see a thing to commit a pull request, right? And you have just contributed to opensource.net. So that is a great way to get involved. The next thing, another thing that you can do once you're contributing, so some of these things that I listed here, you can also get involved in a meetup, start speaking at your local meetups. That's how I got started speaking. It's how pretty much every speaker I know has gotten started in speaking, is going and speaking at meetups. And it doesn't just have to be speaking. I know most meetup leaders would love some help. They would love help in, coordinating speakers or handling admin or handling whatever. Or sending out, meeting information, that kind of thing. So that is a great way to get involved. Projects. So I did mention that we have projects that are applying pretty fast, and we're still scaling up how quickly we can bring them in. But submit your projects, and I'll have an easy way to get that conversation started is to email me. My email's at the end of this presentation, and I'd love to talk to you about bringing projects in. Corporate sponsorship, if you're working for a company that you think could sponsor .NET Foundation, we'd love to have you. I was talking to people at Build this past week, and they said, an example, there are some obvious reasons to sponsor .NET Foundation. We show your logo and things, and there's marketing. But another example is a place told me, hey, if my company sponsored .NET Foundation, we could use that in recruiting developers. Because developers want, some leading developers want to be working in open source. They want to work for a company that contributes to open source. And so that, they were excited about using that as part of their marketing stuff. So I love here that I actually wrote my name. This should be the word join, not John. Jon, the .NET Foundation, yes. So if you want to join the .NET Foundation, that's, if you go to .NET Foundation website, you're going to see it kind of all over the place. right on the home page, we say apply for membership. The process of applying for membership is not super hard. We do ask a couple of things. One is we do ask that you are actually involved in .NET open source community. It doesn't have to be a big deal. So for instance, there are links on here where you can fill in, hopefully first name and last name and email, those are not super hard for you. These contribution things, these are if you have actually contributed a pull request, and that includes like contributing to the docs. It also includes contributing to other open source .NET projects. But it's not just that. That also includes things like blog posts, a link to a meetup that you've spoken at, right? So this is, are you involved in the .NET community? And then finally, if that's not a good obvious way, you can write here and say, I help at the local meetup and teach students at my school or whatever, right? So you just fill that in and submit it. If you're not sure, and I regularly have people email us, we have links on here that say, hey, if you don't know, if you've got questions, contact us, right? So just email us. So there's that. And then once you've joined the .NET Foundation, we'd love to have you as part of an action group. So I mentioned those different action groups. We're going to be forming more of these in the future. So the idea is we want to look at ways that members can get involved and solve problems together as a community. So the idea here really is to look at, this is our .NET. This is my .NET, this is your .NET, right? This is not, it's an open source project. It's 87% non-Microsoft developed now. This is something that Microsoft cares deeply about, but I do too, and you do too. You're spending your day here at a conference learning about .NET, right? So if this is something you care deeply about, if this is your community, this is the best way to get involved. And with that, that's me. So we do have a little bit of time for questions. If you, I'm going to be here all day today. You can talk to me. You can connect to me on Twitter. I'm not too hard to find. You can always email me. So there's this john@dotnetfoundation.org. If you also, if you've fallen asleep but then you later no, maybe I am interested in this .NET Foundation. If you go to .NET Foundation website, there's plenty of places on here where, if you click around, you're going to find that contact email and you'll find contact info. All right, I'm ready for some questions. Does anyone have any? If not, I'll just make some stuff up. But questions, thoughts? Yeah.
1 second, please. First time, thank you, John.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sergey. Actually, so thank you very much for the talking. It was really interesting, actually. So the question may be silly. Sorry for that, but I saw Samsung among the contributors, and basically, it stands a little bit apart from all that nice common like Microsoft, Lyric, and something like that. So the question is, does Samsung have some open source projects for .NET, or is it using .NET heavily? So why is it there basically, maybe apart from contributing?
Yeah, great
Thank
question.
You.
Yeah, so Samsung does contribute directly to .NET, to Core CLR and Core FX. So you'll see here, they joined in 2016. They do have the Tizen platform uses .NET. So this is, you can develop for TVs and watches and all kinds of things using .NET. So they've chosen .NET as their platform for developing for a lot of Samsung projects. As a result of that, they actually, I'm not sure, it would take me a little bit to dig it up on GitHub, but they've contributed several things to getting .NET to run on specific CPUs and specific hardware. So that's actually a big part of, if you look at .NET and where it runs now, it's supported on a lot of different platforms, and part of getting good Linux support has come from non-Microsoft contributions, right? So, whoa. That's my first, there you go. So if you look at all the different kind of Linuxes that we support, that's partly come from Samsung. It's also as well come from, like, we have Red Hat contributing. We have others that are not part of that slide. That slide I just showed members of the technical steering group, but we have members of a lot of different companies, and they're helping contribute to, making .NET run well on Docker or run well on, Google Cloud or AWS or all different things. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. Thank you so much. It's really incredible. I didn't know about Samsung at all. Thanks so much.
Cool. Yeah, question behind you there?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Thank you for performance. My question is, to be honest, I didn't catch, but how to take a part as a corporate partnership? What is the way? How to get?
A corporate partnership?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so if you search, hopefully this comes up. If I go .NET Foundation, corporate sponsor. So the first link I get here, well, this is on Bing. Hopefully it is on Google too. But there's information here why you should join. So this is helpful in explaining, hopefully, to, if you need to explain to a boss or to management or whatever, this has information about why we created the corporate sponsor program. And also, I believe at the end of this, it basically says email us. And that's...
yeah.
Yeah, and the reason is, if a company is going to be joining and spending $50,000 a year, they're not going to fill in a form and put in their credit card normally, I don't think. They're going to want to talk to somebody, right? And so that's the idea.
Exactly. But just maybe have you thought about to launch some platform, not only corporate partnership, like a just usual person, usual developers?
Great question.
Is there any like a platform for donates? I don't know.
Yes. Great question. So is there a way for you to donate as an individual developer? So as part of the membership application, when you go through and fill this out, we review the memberships because some of them are blank, or some of them, they'll contribution statement says, actually I developed for SharePoint or whatever, right? So we actually review them. And then when we accept someone's membership, there's a part of the membership where you can pay dues. So we ask for $100 a year of annual dues. You don't have to pay it. You can pay $1 or you can pay $0. So we don't check that. Nobody is going to look and see how much you contributed. But if you do contribute, there are two ways to do it, and one of them is through Open Collective. So Open Collective is really cool. There's two ways. There's three options. One is click the opt-out button, and we say, okay, thank you, you're a member still. That's cool, but you don't have to pay any money. Option two is you can PayPal us. If you PayPal, that's flexible for a few different reasons. One is you can set up to pay monthly or to pay every 2 months or something like that, so you can do a subscription. So students have talked to us, and first of all, students, we say you don't have to, of course, don't pay if you're a student and you're broke, that's okay. But option two is if you, some students say, I would like to contribute, but $5 a month or something like that. And so you can do that through PayPal. If you do want to contribute through Open Collective, the neat thing about Open Collective is this actually does show who's contributed and how much, right? It also makes it easy for us to pay out to people. So these are people that have decided to contribute through Open Collective. And what's cool is we actually, .NET Foundation supports some different things. So for instance, just this morning, as part of .NET Foundation, we contributed to, and these are some companies also that have contributed, which is cool. So you actually, if you want, you don't have to join the .NET Foundation. You can just go through this Open Collective and look at .NET Foundation and contribute through that. And so this is something where our plan is to spend this money on things that are very obviously for the community. So this doesn't go towards, administrative expenses or things. All of these are things like putting on events, sponsoring projects, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. And you don't have to keep standing, but I'll just talk more about what this Open Collective is. What's cool about this is it makes it obvious what money is coming in and where the money is going also. So this is something that is something where we looked at and we said, hey, projects could also use this, and events could also use this. So for instance, this morning I was setting up one for an event in the Netherlands, and it would take me a little bit of clicking through to find it, but this is something where we donated money to them, and they're able to. We're holding the money for them, and we're a nonprofit, and so they don't have to worry about weird tax things and paying for international taxes and stuff like that. So, yeah, cool.
Thanks for the talk. That was very interesting.
Thank you.
I am a member of both the F# and .NET Foundation, and as of recently, I saw that some of the core F# projects, like F# language design, they have moved on GitHub to the .NET organization.
How long ago did you see that?
A couple of days ago.
Okay, yeah.
So what I wanted to ask is if there is a plan maybe to merge those two foundations or like those organizations, and like what's the deal there?
Yeah, so we've talked to the F# Foundation. We need to help on that member roster. We do work with the F# Foundation. The F# Foundation is actually a little bit different. So .NET Foundation actually holds the copyrights for different projects and things like that. The F# Foundation doesn't do that. So the F# Foundation helps users and organizations and stuff. So there's a lot that we could do working together. So we actually have some conversations going about doing exactly that. So I don't think necessarily that they will merge, but I think that we will overlap more. For instance, we were talking about, maybe we should offer, just if you're an F# Foundation member, you're automatically a .NET Foundation member, that kind of thing. So
Thank you.
yeah, and please, that's an important discussion. So please keep thinking about that. I think inside the F# community, that would be great if you can let us know how .NET Foundation can serve you better. So it shouldn't be separate. We should work together more.